The new moon in Scorpio, 15 November 2020, is coming up here Sunday in Central Europe. And this is a very potent new moon. It's one that deals with healing, but deep healing. The last syzygy before eclipse season, it really sets us up for seeding some healing energy through the difficult finish potentially to 2020. Just to kick off here, I want to say that my new moon videos, these are really about interpreting the symbols of the transiting sky, the natural significations of the planets, extracting from that transiting experience symbolically important messages that can be useful for the collective. It's distinct from a natal chart reading where we would really break down the house division of someone's nativity and see where a new moon like this would appear in your natal chart. We go deep into the house division of your chart, and then we can overlay this symbology onto that house division to really get more nuanced and directly applicable understandings of a new moon. But this video is this transiting symbology and extracting something almost like a collective message. And it's very powerful. So let's dig into the chart. The first thing I want to mention about the chart is this is a new moon happening at 24 Scorpio, right there at the end of Scorpio. It's ruled by Mars. Mars has just stationed direct in Aries, and so now it's starting to gain speed. The idea that this is a Mars kind of exploding out of the gate. It may take a little time to gain speed, but just this juice of a direct Mars can sometimes be explosive. We've seen historical examples of that. This new moon is coming in to begin a new lunation cycle with that energy of green light in terms of that martial action, almost a doubling up. Mars is new in a way because of this direct station. And now the new moon here is ruled by Mars. So this kind of dual newness that this moon can sort of embody. So think about that in your life. What can you do during this lunation to set yourself up for this finish to 2020? Because remember, after this, it's a lunar eclipse in Gemini, then a solar eclipse in Sagittarius. And it's not till the end of December that we get free from the really strange, wonky, and faded eclipse energy. The term, the Egyptian term, which is that powerful division of the zodiac that was so popular in the ancient world, Jupiter rules the term of this lunation, and Jupiter is making a very, very, very close sextile from Capricorn. Jupiter in the ancient texts, you see Valens talk about Jupiter as release, freedom from troubles, beneficence, and this seeding of some beneficent energy. Boy, don't we need it, right? Because Jupiter in Capricorn has been quite rough for many in terms, and for the changes we've seen. But I think this is kind of that seeded healing that's going to come in the succeeding weeks, because Jupiter's condition starts getting a lot better as Jupiter's right at the end of Capricorn, moving fairly fast and about to enter Aquarius, where Jupiter will not return to Capricorn for another 12 years. A parting gift that Jupiter's giving us is this sextile, these rays that are cast back to help infuse this new moon for this next cycle with some of that real Jupitarian beneficence and that healing energy. The other part of the Jupiter-Mars relationship in this chart is that Jupiter is overcoming Mars from Capricorn as Mars is stationing direct. It's part of why the worst case scenarios, I think, of what Mars can do as it gets released from its retrograde inhibition are maybe mitigated somewhat, because Jupiter can flood it from that overcoming square. It's one of the most powerful aspects that either Jupiter or Venus can make in terms of giving good energy to a planet earlier in zodiacal order. In the older text, they call it upon the 10th. And of course, Saturn rules everything because it rules Capricorn, it rules Jupiter, and it's also upon the 10th with respect to Mars. So we're still in that restricted energy, and that I think will continue. I'm seeing stories about new kind of shutting down of the social environment as a result of the respiratory illness season coming. So that looks like it's pretty much baked into the cake at this point. So it might be imposition of new structures and new rules coming when Jupiter enters Aquarius, because Saturn will be there with Jupiter. There's an interpretive idea here that there's certain green lights that have come in the sky. And you might just want to think about, how's your year been? I mean, what things are now moving forward, that Mars is starting to move forward, that Mars rules this new moon, giving that juice. And the one thing is that Jupiter is wisdom, Jupiter is assistance from others, other powerful people, and so you have that sextile here. You might look to who's powerful, who can you email? What kind of authorities can you get interfaced with or connected with to assist you on this martial movement forward? There's news stories out right now that the global economy may be recovering somewhat, that we've got announcements of new treatments for illness, for the respiratory illnesses that we've been shocked with in 2020. Those treatments may be coming in to kind of set up a recovery into 2021. I think it'll be more 2022 or even beyond when the recovery starts getting rolling. But you saw the stock market this week, record highs, right? Because people are so optimistic that these treatments, these inoculations are going to be useful to kind of release us back into something that is akin to what, the old economy. Jupiter being this release, Jupiter being wisdom, but Mars is also, you can think about it, the inoculation, right? Mars, it's the sharp object that goes in. Mars is very much about the side of medicine where you actually use sharp things to go into the body. Remember, this is just one new moon in a larger cycle of a lot happening, but I think it's an important snapshot of the kind of optimism that can come when we deal with martial, wisdom around new technologies that could potentially be used to kind of release the economy back into its old way of being. There's questions about how quick the economic recovery will come. And I think that matches with the astrology. Jupiter-Saturn co-presence, which doesn't really complete until the end of 2021. And I think Jupiter-Saturn co-presence is, it's good for some things, but it can inhibit economic activity. In December 2021, Jupiter leaves that co-presence with Saturn until the next leg of its cycle. Roughly 12 years. It's probably between 10 and 12 years that Jupiter will leave a co-presence with Saturn. And I think it brings a real sense of release and relief. 2022 is when that happens. So this could be a slower process, but the symbols of this new moon are here. And we saw the stories this week, right? New inoculation technology, new treatments being developed. Everybody's happy. The economy can return to normal. I think companies are figuring out how to integrate the Aquarian technological structures into their businesses so that they can be given the green light by governments and by policymakers for a return to kind of economic, robust economic activity. Scorpio is fixed water. And what is fixed? And water can be emotion. Water can be, remember, water is so sensitive. You can look at the work of Dr. Emoto, where you take pictures, and if you incantate, and if you speak to water and you take pictures of it, it really can reflect the energy that you imbued it with. Remember, our bodies are 70% water. Some of us more than others, but in general, humans are quite sensitive to their environment. We take on what's around us. And the part about fixed emotions is that this can, I think, really point to trauma. And remember, Mars rules Scorpio. Mars is a planet of trauma. Mars is a planet of really difficult events. We can't work our way around that or delineate out of that part of Mars's significations. And when you combine the sensitivity of water with the really difficulty of Mars, to me, this is the sign really of trauma, of emotional trauma. And particularly in childhood where we're very sensitive, the traumatic wounds can be seared into the emotional body, and they stay there fixed, just like Scorpio is a fixed sign. This energy of the new moon can really give us an invitation, if we're ready and if we want to go into some of that and maybe start new cycles or start wherever we're at with our traumatic recovery. Some people are in a phase of unconscious that it's even there. Others of us have gone through and worked through some of that in therapy or just through our life experiences. But whatever phase we're in with our trauma recovery, and everybody's traumatized at some level, I believe, because that's part of the human experience. There's no perfect childhood. Everything is traumatic because we're sensitive, we're maturing into the fact that we've incarnated into this physical form and all of the restrictions and the rules of what it means to be in a human body. I talked about the First Noble Truth of Buddhism last week. That's the same here. It's traumatic, right? And even childhood, parents are separate from children. And so there's no complete meeting of the child's needs. I mean, there's some great parents out there and some really less traumatic environments, but trauma is part of maturation. But this new moon is what I'm saying is it's a real opportunity to go inward and say, all right, where's my trauma? Where am I at with my traumatic healing? What emotional reactions are still fixed in me? How is that working out? How are my fixed responses useful? And remember, Jupiter, the planet of release, of bondage and freedom. This could be, I think, potentially powerful to release some of that fixed emotional reactivity that we can get locked into with that sextile from Jupiter ruling the Egyptian term of this lunation. How far have you come? You can even look back with with energy like this. When was that time when you realized just that you were a traumatized person? I remember for me, I was 18. I I was 18 and I went through a really difficult breakup. Man, she broke my heart, or my heart was broken as a result of the interaction. I don't like to say she did, because it was really about me and about my perception and what I brought into that situation, my fixed emotions. And that really came forth for me. And that began really my healing journey, seeing just how much my childhood and my traumatic childhood was reenacted through this relationship. And it was a real gift. So I see her now as my initiatrix in a lot of ways, and my teacher. It's a lot of healing that's come since then. That's over a nodal cycle ago, just about a nodal cycle ago. But it's this kind of work. We can look back and just kind of think, because remember, Mercury's co-present here with this new moon. I think Mercury can be that detailed analysis. So I might do a little bit of journaling. Just making this video actually is part of this energy for me. I want to speak here about Aries and Scorpio and their relationship to each other, because Aries and Scorpio don't make a Ptolemaic aspect. They actually don't see each other. They're inversion. So to stay on the theme of trauma, Mars in Aries is more active. It's the day sect sign that Mars rules. And so it's really about moving into the world and moving into action. And whereas Scorpio doesn't see that action, but it's more the fixed emotion. There's this relationship between our unconscious woundedness that we almost have to bury to survive, so we can function and survive in the world through our actions. If someone was forced to see the full woundedness every day, every moment, it's very hard to function like that. It's very hard to go to work. And that's why trauma sometimes lays dormant, or very often lays dormant. That might be a definition of it. It's emotional intensity that's so powerful we have to bury it to function. And that is where I think this trauma signification of Mars comes in, with the outer, the Aries, the actions that happen, and then that kind of hidden, unconscious, buried emotional woundedness. It's this kind of dichotomy that Mars operates with. And like I said, it's very hard to function if we had to just feel and be so sensitive and feel pain. You can't. You have to bury it. It's part of the human survival. But you can't let it lay buried all the time, right? Mars comes back to uncover and heal that scorpionic intensity. That can be a positive signification of Mars, is the trauma that's used to heal. Mars is so strong in Aries that I think we do have this ability to kind of use that strong Mars while the planets are in Scorpio and seeding in Scorpio, to kind of go into that traumatic, emotional processing project that I was just referring to. Mars in Aries is really supportive of this scorpionic moment. It's another beneficent side of this energy. I'm really excited about this new moon, by the way. It's intense, but I'm very, very excited. Emotional healing is a necessary condition for functional living. There's some fixed stars here that are so potent. They're telling such a complementary story with this healing that I just mentioned. And the two fixed stars are, let me pronounce these correctly, Agena, fixed star Agena, and then the fixed star Unukalai. And Agena is in the knee of the centaur Chiron. And Anukalai is in the heart of the serpent that Asclepius holds. And so this, just right away, your bells should be going off. Those of you who know ancient mythology or astrologers out there, Chiron, Asclepius, these are the healers. These are the healing constellations. Great healer centaur. And when Asclepius wanted to become a healer, I guess he showed talent for healing. He was sent to Chiron to learn, and actually he became even a better healer than Chiron. So we have a student teacher in this guy of the great healers of the Greek tradition. These two fixed stars directly shooting into this new moon. This healing theme is really, really powerful, and because of the fixed water, I went with the traumatic and emotional side of healing, but you might just extract this out higher. What kind of healing could be useful to you right now? But sometimes with this type of healing, there's unseen wounds. We don't even know the wounds we have. That's the big kind of twist of the plot. Often we're not even aware of the stuff that we're going to have to heal from. And this Chironic energy, according to Manilius, can really treat that. So you might want to use in your prayers and in your kind of spiritual centering right now, think about, all right, I don't know where I need healing, but I'm open to that healing. I think that's what the Chiron can show us. Sometimes with healing traumas, emotional traumas, scorpionic traumas, you don't really ever get to full skin again. You might develop a scar, or you might just be living with the wound, but you integrate it into a new sense of self, so there is a kind of full person that can meet the world. That wound is not something that you ever get over. I mean, I'm a person that lost his mother, but I've integrated it a lot better than I had in my younger years, to where I can openly talk about it now, and just, it's part of who I am. It's part of this integrated self that I have. But that wound is a poison. Was a poison in a way of my emotions, and it lives in me still. That's the other side of this healing energy, that the poison becomes the actual salve. So in homeopathy, they have this thing called the law of similars, where if you want to heal from one illness, you basically trigger the same symptoms with other, like barks or things. There's two things. When we want to heal trauma, we have to re-experience it often for it to come up to be seen, especially when it's unconscious. And two, there can be empathy that's created once we get to the other side of our and integrate. We can actually see it in others and be that bridge to healing for other people. This last fixed star, Asclepius, this is the great healer, and it's Ophiuchus. So this is actually a new moon that's Ophiuchus energy. This is the Ophiuchus new moon. It's actually the serpent that Ophiuchus holds. But we think of Ophiuchus as Asclepius, the healer. So this snake that Asclepius holds, this is the poison, right? The poison of that snake. That venom can be useful. You get that snake venom sometimes, and you can rub it on things to heal. So Unukalai is right in the heart of this medicinal snake that Asclepius holds in the Ophiuchus constellation. And by the way, this is just, if you're dealing with any kind of traumas that you're trying to heal from, it's really good to, if it gets too intense, get some professional help. Find a therapist, and really try to understand that. These are long cycles of healing that take years, and pain and suffering, And that's again the Scorpio, right? The deep fixed emotional energy ruled by Mars, the planet that can inflict suffering. But that's what this serpent represents that Asclepius is holding, this idea of truth and lifting the veil. If you lifted it all and saw reality for truly what it was, it might be so terrifying that you would explode or something like that. In the Bible, you see depictions of it. When you see God, it's just so terrifying it would kill. That's what I think this serpent represents. It's the Saturn and Mars, the intense kind of risks that come with playing in the waters of truth. And it certainly is applicable when we talk about healing emotional trauma. When we're at our lowest, there's the seed of that divine spark that can take us to our highest. And that's really what I think about this new moon being. It's a deep, dark, painful, traumatic new moon in some ways, but with all of this mitigation, with Jupiter and that sextile and strong Mars and Mercury there, we can use it to our highest advantage, or at least use it for healing and for spiritual connection. And it's a nice new moon that sets up for eclipse season, where the spiritual practices become so necessary and needed. And I just want to say, it's good to just seek out healers. If you're hurting, find healers. Find that Jupiter in your life. Find that Asclepius energy. Find that truth. And maybe that's a good place to end this part, because this is a threshold for the rest of 2020, where we're entering into this new Aquarian moment, this at least 3 years of Aquarian moment, maybe 20 years of Aquarius, maybe 200 years, or maybe a whole Aquarian age, a sidereal age. But that's this threshold. We have to finish the 2020 initiation, moving through that threshold. So sextile with Jupiter can really, I think, maybe bring some of that joy and hope a little bit here. And I remember the times when I was at my lowest, sometimes just laughing and crying and then laughing. You laugh and cry, you cry and laugh. There's a connected joy into all this healing, is my experience. When that healing is really taking, you can really release joy. I remember the first time I smiled in years. I had a laugh for the first time that felt authentic to me. And before that, I had spent a couple of years in some really dark places. And that's the kind of Jupiter, the sextile energy that this new moon can bring, is oh wow, this is a laugh. My first kind of intense laugh. So maybe, 2020 has been so intense. Look for those moments where you can start feeling a little bit like yourself again. So we got tarot now. We got some cards. We're going to pull some cards. Love it. Love the tarot. Love to pull cards. Let's check this out. All right. So let's get the first card. This is King of Diamonds. King of Diamonds. This is Capricorn. This is the devil, if you're going to correspond this to a major arcana in the tarot. But this is that king, that great earth king that Capricorn can be. Remember, Saturn signifies eminence. Jupiter and Saturn are right there in Capricorn, finishing out their time in Capricorn. I guess what I would go here with this is that as these two planets leave this part of the zodiac for this time, for many years, how can you take something? Some people say, well, the planets will give you a gift as they exit a sign. Maybe be aware of that gift, or you might have a good sense of what that gift has already been. You might even just think about what are the tough lessons, what are the kind of mini traumas you've had to go through while this Capricorn energy has been so activated. How have they made you stronger? How are you going to be more kingly now for that next 30-year Saturn cycle, for that next 12-year Jupiter cycle? How are you, kingly, being regal, being dignified, being empowered? How has this earth energy and this cycle done that for you? This might be some of that reflective noting I was talking about earlier with the traumas. You can also do reflective noting just for this Capricorn cycle. And with that Jupiter in Capricorn making that beautiful, it's tiny, it's less than a degree, that sextile to the new moon, that's what I would say this card is pointing us to. And it's in the first position here in the 2-card reading, which is that past, that immediate past. So this is more of that reflective side, I think. Let's get the second card. Yeah, it's cool to see some discussion on Twitter this week about astrology and tarot and how they interact. And I think more of us can use these tools. And you can see here, every card has that correspondence to something in the zodiac, and you can then match it to a place in the chart. And then where are the planets in that place? Where is that in your natal chart? Also think about Capricorn. That's a way to explore Capricorn energy. Where is it in your natal chart? What house is it? And how have lessons in that house made you more into a king of that energy during this very intense time? All right, last card. All right, justice. Interesting. La Justice. This is a Libra in our tradition, in our tarot correspondence tradition, and I use the Golden Dawn. Someone had emailed me about that. I like those for the major arcana, and I don't use outers. With that, just go to Golden Dawn Book T. They've got a whole elucidation there. So justice, yeah, I mean, look, this is a time of justice. This is a time we've had the election, okay? There's a sense that the legal process is having to resolve itself, right? This is the law. Justice is the law. And I think here that we're, this is where we're at in that phase of the cycle. Venus is right here in Libra right now too, I think, giving some really nice energy to this principle of justice. And so it might be that the court cases have to get resolved to resolve the election. And even though we kind of know the result, I think I'm still pretty sure about the result and about the Biden presidency that's coming. But there's these wild cards, right, with these court cases. So I think maybe that's what it's pointing to. But let's just bring it back to this theme we've been talking about with trauma, with healing, with recovery. Justice is the balance. It's when things get balanced. And I really think this can be pointing to an integrated self, the integrated self that can come with that healing, with that looking into the past, with, it's almost doing justice to the pains that we've gone through when we can pause and give them the space they need to breathe. And when we integrate them, that's a balanced self where we give it the power that it deserves. We acknowledge its power, but we don't overemphasize it so that it defeats us. It actually is held in a very, very nice, like I said, integrated. I'm using the term integrated in this video all the time. Integration. But I think integrated at its best is this balance between difficulty and pain of the past, the present moment realities, and then moving into a future with the sword of justice as we kind of go into our new challenges with that justice, that wisdom of that sword of justice, and kind of cutting through the bullshit based on the lessons and the experiences and the difficulties we've gone through. So that's the tarot reading. Thank you for being here. I'm really happy to do this video. It's a joy. It brings me great joy to be able to explore this stuff and then send it out into the world. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. As always, you can book astrology and tarot readings with me. sjanderson144.com. Just click here to schedule a reading right at the top. I look forward to reading for you. Yeah, and have a sweet, sweet new moon in Scorpio. If you're dealing with some of that emotional intensity, look for your healing. I will see you in another video very soon to talk about the astrology of next week. Take care.